Good evening and thank you for tuning into this math video. So we've been talking about percentages. In class today with the candy activity, we were trying to figure out what percent of the whole candy mix it was a certain amount of candy. So what I want to do tonight is I want to review what we went over today, and I also want to introduce you to the percent proportion. So just a little reminder, a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. So in class, we worked problems such as, what percent of 16 is 4? So if you remember, in class, when we did the candy activity, we divided 4 by 16. Or in other words, we divided the part by the whole, and then we multiplied by 100. Okay? Another way to think about that same problem is to think of the percent proportion. So in the percent proportion, the ratio of a part of something to the whole is equal to the percent as a fraction. So it looks like this. We have part over whole is equal to the percent. Now this, we basically used this proportion today, but without really realizing it. Because you remember what you did in the candy activity is you had to solve for the percent. So what you did was you divided the part by the whole, and then to solve for percent, you multiplied both sides by 100. Or you multiplied by 100 in order to get the percent. However, you're not always going to be solving for the percent. Sometimes you might be solving for the part, sometimes you might be solving for the whole. So this percent proportion is going to be very useful. However, I just wanted to point out that this is nothing new. You did this very same thing today whenever you did the candy activity. Now in percent problems, the whole usually follows the word of. Okay? And then the word is usually associated with the part. So another way to remember what goes on top and what goes on bottom is that the is what goes on top, and the of is what goes on bottom. So when you're working the problems, look for where the of is first and then put that one on bottom. Okay, let's go ahead and try an example. What percent of 80 is 7? I'm going to look for the of first, so here's my of. The 80 is what follows the of, okay? So my 80 is what's going to go on bottom. My 7 is my part, so 7 is going to go on top. So I have 7 over 80 is equal to x over 100. At this point, you could do two things. You could do 7 divided by 80 and then multiply by 100 to solve for x. Or, because this is a proportion, you can just cross multiply. I suggest that for now you cross multiply because whenever you're working other problems, cross multiplication is usually going to be the easier method. So when I cross multiply, I now have 700 is equal to 80x. Okay? Divide both sides by 80, and x is going to equal 8.75. So 7 is 8.75% of 80. Because these are word problems, I want my final answer to be in words as well. So my final answer is going to be 7 is 8.75% of 80. Okay? So when you're working these problems, you should show your proportion, your cross multiplication, what you got for x, and then you need to write your final answer as a sentence. So I'm trying to figure out what percent of 80 is 7. So my final answer written in words is going to be 7 is 8.75% of 80. Let's go ahead and work another problem. Next problem is, what percent of 15 is 75? So this one's different because when we think of the whole, we think that the whole is going to be bigger than the part. However, that's not always going to be the situation. Here, the number 15 follows the word of. So 15 is my whole. That's what's going to go on bottom. My part is going to be 75. So notice in this case, my part is bigger than my whole. So I have 75 over 15 is equal to x over 100. Again, I just cross multiply. So I have 7,500 is equal to 15x. When I divide both sides by 15, x is equal to 500%. So in other words, 75 is 500% of 15. Another way to think about it is, you know that 100% represents a whole. So another way to think about it is that 75 is 5 times greater than 15. So for my final answer, I'm just going to put 75 is 500% of 15, which basically means that 75 is 5 times greater than 15. Now here in this third example, we're not going to be solving for the percent. We're going to actually be solving for the part. So 40% of 80 is what number? Okay, 80 follows the word of, so 80 is my whole. I don't know what my is, so that's going to be my x. So I have x over 80. I know that my percent is 40. So I put 40 over 100. Now, just cross multiply. So you should get 100x is equal to 3,200. I divide both sides by 100, and so my x is 32. Now, it's not 32% because I'm trying to figure out what is 40% of 80, okay? So my final answer is going to be 32 is 40% of 80. So in this situation, the question's asking me to solve for my part. All right, so those are a couple basic problems. I want you to go ahead and try these few practice problems on your own, and then tomorrow we'll talk about it in class. God bless you and have a good day.